Hello, folks. You're all very welcome back to the Celtic Soul podcast. I'm Andrew Millen, your host as always. And today in the podcast, I'll be chatting to my good old friend Matt McGlone about Celtic winning 55 titles, 4 in a row, and the upcoming game against the Rangers when Celtic fans will once again be back in Ibrox. It won't be a full allocation that we used to get. On Facebook this morning, a old memory popped up of when we used to get the full Brimlow end. And in the pictures was a certain Tosh McKinley celebrating the win from the stands. So I'm sure there'll be a clamour for tickets again, as there always is when Celtic travel anywhere, whether it's in Europe or around Scotland. We always bring a great support with us. Folks, if you're tuning in for the first time on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And you'll also get us on audio across all platforms, your preferred platform, Apple, Spotify, Acast, whichever it is, you'll find us there. Thank you so much for the support. The Fanzine 137, the print edition is now sold out. You can still download the digital edition by visiting celticfanzine.com. And at the website, you'll find all our blogs, news, upcoming events, merchandise, and you can subscribe to the fanzine. Or if you want to support the podcast, you can donate for a price for a cup of coffee. And we thank everyone who continues to support us and keep the old boat afloat. So as I said, big weekend ahead as we travel across the road, I suppose, to Ibrox. Someone said, "Is this a dead rubber?" No, it's never a dead rubber when you're playing them. We've a bit of revenge to do. We want to finish strong. Competition is so strong for places at the moment. And what about James Forrest? Congratulations, James. The most decorated Celtic player ever. And these are all things I'll be chatting to with our guest, Matt. And I would just want to say a big shout out to all our sponsors who have sponsored us in the fanzine and indeed on this podcast. And if you would like to sponsor an episode of the podcast or place an advert in the fanzine or on the website, you can contact us by emailing info@celticfanzine.com, and you'll also get us across all the social media platforms. So without further ado, let's get a chat with Matt. Matt McGlone,
hello.
Welcome back to the Celtic Soul podcast. It's been a nice weekend, and we look forward to another good weekend.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. I was up at Tannadice and with one of my sons, and what a fantastic day out. I have to give a big shout out here to at the very beginning to a guy that really helped me out here on Saturday. Helped me and my lad out. He got his tickets for Tannadice. Stephen Conway, I believe you know him.
An absolute gentleman.
He's an absolute diamond. Wonderful guy, and he went out his way when he had lots of other people to help out for the weekend, and he gave myself and my son a great day at Tannadice. It's one of those days you'll never forget when you won the league. So thanks to Stephen for that. Brilliant guy.
Yeah, he is, and he's helped me out with a couple of gig tickets. He's a great man for gig tickets too.
Yeah, he's just a good all round guy. Helpful, generous, thoughtful. Just one of these people that you don't often find these days.
And he loves the Celtic as well as his music.
He loves the Celtic, and he likes his films, his crime films as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. No, that's one thing we don't have in common. Matt, before we look back at that great day in Tannadice, let's look ahead. Celtic fans back in Ibrox. Not the full allocation, but we're back.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's better having a presence there, to be honest with you. There's lots of ins and outs with this situation. It's not the full Broomland stand where you and I have had many joyous afternoons. But I think it's good for the team to know that we're there rather than to be surrounded by everything that goes on in that game and not have a friendly face or a friendly voice. It's a focal point for them. They can draw encouragement from the fans being there. And, they I hear they're not giving us a guard order, but the chat today is that they'll be playing simply the best it'll be for us. Well, that's only right and proper.
Well, it's always nice to hear a black R&B singer belting out in Ibrox when Celtic run out.
Well, she never ever wanted that song played there. Tina Turner, wasn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine so because they haven't been too friendly to people of full race over the years.
Yeah, but the words that are attached to it, she didn't want anything to do with that, and she made it clear. Rangers know fine the words that are attached to it and don't really care. So we wonder what the American owners will think of that.
Yeah, interesting. I was listening this morning to a Leeds fan and a Rangers fan on a Scottish podcast about the incoming owners of the Rangers, who also have a big stake in Leeds. But as the Leeds fan was saying, well, we're the big team. We've now won the league. We're up in the Premier League now, and but he did say if Rangers were in the Champions League and we were languishing 20th in the league, well, then maybe the priority might change to Rangers. But his opinion was that they'll be you know playing second fiddle to Leeds.
Well, it's something they're used to, isn't it?
Well, only for when they're playing second fiddle to us. I've no interest in Leeds, but I tell you, I've a lot of interest when they play second fiddle to us, Matt. Matt, it's you know, I had Chris Sutton saying, oh, is it a dead rubber game? Tongue in cheek as Chris does. It's always a massive game. It's great going there as champions. League Cup. The League Cup is in the trophy cabinet. The Scottish Cup. Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great to end the season on with a treble? And we are favourites, but anything can happen in football. But Sunday lunchtime, um, we owe them one. They've beaten us in the last two games, home and away, and the players need to step up to the mark this time because competition for places in certain positions is up for grabs for that cup final.
Absolutely, particularly with Jota's injury not looking good. I know we haven't heard anything official on it, but it didn't look good at Tannadice. See it take a knock on the side of the knee. Yeah, look, if I'm in that dressing room, I want to hear my manager saying, "You're champions. You've been champions for 13 years out of 14. We haven't done well against them in the last two games at all. Go out there today and prove that you're the champions and that you're better. And that's what you've got to do. This is a single-minded 90 minutes game. Forget we're going for a treble. Forget we've just won the league. Get out there, focus and concentrate on these 90 minutes and get the result. The fans need it. The players need it. And it's about time we did it."
Here, man. I'm one of those players that knows all about going to Ibrox. Is now a most decorated player in the history of the club. That's an unbroken history because some clubs have broken their history. James Forrest, phenomenal, and back in contention for a starting place in the team.
James Forrest is, the most decorated player, just picked Bobby Lennox. And James had said during the week, at the weekend rather, that he was going to pop down and see Bobby. James is an Ayrshire lad, and so's Bobby down in Saltcoats. I think James is from Prestwick, just up the road. Yeah, amazing because through the years of everybody listening to this and everybody else supporting Celtic, James has come in for a bit of criticism here and there, but he's always been there for the team. He's come through several team changes and squad changes, and he's still there. And you don't win a record amount of medals and honours for Celtic if you're not a good player. Umpteen managers have said it about him. I remember Neil Lennon telling me when James first came into the squad, he says, "Wait to see this boy." Now, he was never a world beater, but he's a sort of steady Eddie, if you want. And all these squads that he's played in, he's brought something to it. So, I just find that guys like him are very rare, very rare. And Yeah, most Celtic's most decorated player. I'm sure he'll play some part on Sunday. But great for James and great for the club, you know.
Yeah, you mentioned Lennon there talking about him. Lennon said he was ever the professional. He wasn't chopping on the door when he was dropped. He was just got his head down and walked his way back into the team. He said because some players would be banging on the door to know why they weren't playing, but that wasn't James's game. He was just right. I'll go back into this team. I'll wait my time, and he's been wrote off so many times, and he's always come back.
Well, there's a very underestimated thing in football, Andrew, as you know, and that's experienced players having that voice in the dressing room, knowing what to do because you've done it umpteen times before, rather than a newbie coming in and being spooked by an atmosphere. No, James he's an old head if you want, and he's been round the block 100 times with Celtic, and all that experience and calmness and maturity he can pass on to younger players. And having that in a player is a great thing, particularly in the dressing room and on the pitch as well.
Oh, of course, yeah. And like he's been around for you know 9 in a row, and I think when he came into the team, I think we'd lost the league that year by a large margin. He came off the bench as a sub, scored at his debut, and then as seasons went on and he was grown into a first team player, I remember there was a lot of talk of him going down south to Tottenham and that. And I'm sure there have been offers for James over the years to leave for for probably more money, but maybe a lesser club down south because you know yourself, we can't compete with some of the budgets of the teams down there. Things are looking a lot brighter now, obviously, but they do have bigger budgets, and many players have left the club to go down there to play mid-table or relegation battles or even championship football for extra money. But James he was always loyal to the club.
Yeah, yeah, he has, and through so many different squads as you're talking about, you know, and through many different almost eras at the club as far as team changes go. Yeah, is he not getting another year in his contract for next year? I think he was. I'm not quite certain. I think he's got another year. I think Celtic gave him an extension halfway through this year
Yeah,
for
yeah,
next season.
I think you could be right, man. We'll have to check that one.
Yeah,
We
good
have to
guy
get
to have
Pato on
around.
that one.
Good guy to have around, as I say, great experience, and I'm glad he stayed at the club. And he'll play a part on Sunday, I'm sure.
Yeah, and last week you said we spoke about Tannadice before we get to the 55 because it's just a lovely number. I've always admired that number. You know, um,
Well, it's a real 55, isn't it?
that's
There's
it. You know,
no,
I,
there's no interruptions as to what club you are.
I
You
think
know,
I
this
said
is it.
before I introduced you, Matt. John Higgins on. Did you see on the BBC at the World Snooker Championships? 55-1,
I saw it. I,
absolutely
wa-
brilliant.
I know I've watched it, and I don't think he's living quite got what he was saying because he said, "Yeah, we're 54 ahead of our nearest rivals," and she obviously knows it's the 55 title. She's going, "No, no, it's 55, John. It's 55." And I'm thinking,
I
no,
think John
no,
Parrott got the.
He's John's a miles ahead of you here. He's actually having a jibe.
It was great,
He
but
knows he knows it's 55, but it's 54 ahead of our nearest rivals.
so we've just done another four in a row. Um, if we think back when we failed to win the 10 and Rangers won that first title under Stephen Gerrard, the hopes were high that they were going to start dominating Scottish football again. We were in line to Eddie Howe was to be the next manager. Um, that fell through on a Friday evening. We became kind of a bit of a laughing stock. There was the press were giving us a bit of a doon, and up rocks Ange Postecoglou with a toothbrush and no backroom team goes in. Fans start slowly getting back into the games, and he delivers a double and follows with a treble. Uh, Brought a great attacking football. Brought Kyogo to the club, made it to the club. Left for Tottenham. Brendan comes in. wasn't wanted by a lot of fans. Dermot Desmond was the one that wanted him, and he delivers a double. A shaky start. We went out of the League Cup to Kilmarnock, and then he's on the cusp of another treble now. And I suppose the big factor is the improvement in Europe.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Brendan is an elite manager. I had my own feelings about him, which weren't good when he left. And then when he came back, I personally made the decision myself that you have to forget about, what you might feel personally. It's what's best for Celtic. And what's best for Celtic is how elite a coach he is. And that's what he's proved back here again. Yeah, I mean, going for a second treble, fantastic. Game still to be won yet. It'll be a hard game, or the whole build up to it will be hard. We have to look at that, and we have to go and prove it on the day. Nothing's given yet. Of course, as fans, we always think it's kind of more or less done, but it's not done. Nothing's done. The game will be tricky, just because of the occasion. Then by saying that, we banged in half a dozen against Aberdeen, in the semi-final. We played them at Hampden the last time. Yeah, a great season. And sometimes I saw a comment during the week there. What was it? You're not bored winning or something? And I'm thinking, no, because I'm not bored winning because I'm old enough to remember barren years where we won nothing and still supported my club, still went and seen the games. And that feeling of winning nothing is horrible. So you can never say, is this boring because you're winning all the time? It just shows you how great we are in this particular league that we're playing. And in Europe, yeah, we have grown up a fair bit in Europe. Again, Brendan can only do what he can do with the squad that he's got. And I think he's really putting his foot down as far as saying, I really want this guy here, I want this player here. So we have to improve. And a situation that's coming up is the situation with Greg Taylor's contract. Now, Kieran Tierney's been brought in for, I would imagine, pretty high money. I think his first contract at Arsenal was 80,000 a week, and I think his second contract was over 110,000 a week. I don't think I'm far out in those figures. He's come back in here, he's not going to get anything like that, but he'll be on a fair whack. Now, you always need a decent backup as a number two for most positions. I think particularly in defence, you can always have midfield players and wingers and centre forwards that can sort of change position up front. But I think in defence, you've got pretty specialised people for certain jobs. And I think for Kieran, we need a backup. We could end up playing over 40, 50, maybe 60 games. If you throw in international games there as well. And I don't think Kieran's going to play all those games. I don't think he thinks he is, and I don't think Celtic signed him thinking that he's going to play all these games, which brings you back to a backup player, Greg Taylor. I think Greg Taylor is a very good Celtic player. I think Celtic's problem, I don't think Greg wants to leave Celtic, but I've been asking around a few folk that we know in this business, and I've been in this business over 30 years, 35 years now. And some of my contacts tell me that Greg wants to stay at Celtic, but he feels that he should be given a wage that maybe suits the fact that he's a first-team player. I think Greg, from all knowledge, this will surprise you, was on £400 a week when he came from Kilmarnock to Celtic. I think he was on about 8.5 when he came to Celtic. I think he got another rise up to about 13, which is probably his current wage at the minute. I think he's looking for well over 20. Now, if it was 20 for a backup player over a year, that's £1 million. Celtic, I think, still have a kind of old-fashioned attitude that you don't pay £1 million wages for a backup player. But if you want to be serious in Europe and not, who are you going to bring in? Let's say Kieran Tierney gets injured in the Champions League. You bring in a boy that's maybe played 2 or 3 first-team football games. That defeat alone could cost you £3 million in prize money. You get about £3 million roughly if you win the Champions League per game. So Celtic have to look at maybe the fact that you do have to maybe pay a backup player over £1 million a year. I think they have to get their head round that. I don't think they do that at the minute.
And Brent,
So
sorry, Matt.
sorry, just to say, I think Greg is well worth keeping. I think if Kieran's fitness is as good as it looks at the minute, I think that maybe Kieran would play 60, 65% of the matches throughout the season, 70 maybe. And we need a good backup player for 30, 35, 40% of the time. So we have to look at it that way. Who do you have to bring in if that good player gets injured? Greg Taylor, for me, is a very good player.
Well, Brendan seems to like him. Brendan always speaks very highly about him. He said he wants to keep him, but he understands that like he like that Greg is probably this could be his last chance to make serious or make more money for his future. Football is a short career. Like none of
Yeah.
us would shrink at earning 8.5 grand a week, but as well as that, he probably wants to feel that he's wanted and he's going to contribute the same as other players. I agree with you that Kieran, as a friend of mine called Kieran when he left, he goes, "Oh, biscuit hips," because of his injury problems. And you're right. There's no way Kieran Tierney will play every game. I had Didier Gat on the podcast last week, a player that couldn't get a contract until Martin O'Neill took a chance on him. Didier didn't play every week, but he played in all the big games. But there was an
Yeah.
awful lot of football still to be played,
Mm-hmm.
in
I think
Europe
that,
and domestically.
yeah, I've been told that the way Celtic look at wages are if a player, say in this instance, Greg Taylor was to leave, would you go to a team in the Premiership and get regular game? Maybe unlikely. Maybe unlikely. So Celtic then look at where would he go if it wasn't in the UK? If it was in the UK, where would he go? Well, he maybe go to the Championship, and the wages he would maybe get in the Championship would maybe be around the 25,000 pound a week in the top half of the Championship. But as you know, in the the England Championship, as you know, the bottom half of that league, the teams won't be paying that kind of money. So Celtic are sort of looking at Greg's options and thinking, how do we weigh up what he can earn elsewhere if he leaves us? So I think they're looking at a team in the top half of the Championship, or maybe the lower echelons of the English Premier League. I think that's the way Celtic are looking at it. I hope we can get things sorted out. I think it'll be pretty sad to see Greg go. You know, if it's for just over $1.5 million a year for a backup, why not? We don't just pay first team players good money. This is a squad game, as Brendan and all experienced managers will tell you. It's a squad game, so you have to pay them good squad wages. If Greg Taylor is a backup, who have we got to bring in? I don't see MD there. So who we have to go out and buy somebody? What's that going to cost you to buy Greg Taylor's like in the transfer market? What will that cost you? 4, 5 million?
Yeah, and you know what you have with Greg. We
What's
all
Greg?
know we all know what Brendan loves him playing that inverted position, which Kieran probably won't play. So and then like, people have called players or the team one trick ponies can't change. Well, we proved this year we can change in Europe. We can be a defensive unit as well as an attacking unit, and like I'm delighted that Kieran's coming back. I would like to keep Greg, and I think that's two players then that we're not worried about. We know that we're strong in that position, both domestically and in Europe, because Kieran's a quality player at that level. But we also, I think, Matt, reading between the lines and speaking to a few people, that the policy has changed at the club. The club are now not going to, paying 2, 3 million on 3 or 4 players and taking a chance that one of them will come true. It looks like with the Alameda signing last year and the Engels signing, 9 and 12 million for young players of a certain age with a sell-on value if they can be nurtured and made better players. I think this seems to be the model that the club will go over, and I think players that will come in the summer will be in and around the 10 million bracket. That's my opinion. If they are going to be if the team,
Mm.
if Brendan is confident that they meet the criteria, because I think that may have been the stumbling block um, of bringing another striker in the window. They wanted a certain fit, and that's the chap in Sweden probably made that fit, but they just couldn't get the deal over the line. That's where I think the club is going. I could be wrong, but reading between the lines and speaking to a few people who know more than me, that seems to be the criteria now for players to come to the club.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you. Just to finish off on Greg, quick point there. At least Greg and the club are talking at the minute. So if they're talking at the minute and we're coming to the end of the season, the Scottish Cup final, you'd like to think it's a bit of a feel-good factor and everybody could sort it out. I'm fingers crossed that they will. Yeah, on the players that you're talking about maybe coming in and the amount we're paying, no, there's a different market out there to buy a £10 million player, and that's to buy a £10 million player when he's coming near the end of his contract or at the end of his contract. If he's at the end of his contract, he ain't going to be costing you 10 million. If he's coming near to the end of it, his selling team are going to be thinking of selling you at a cheaper price because that player out of contract will get the team nothing. So I think Celtic look at the overall package. What is the overall package? As fans here, we all quite rightly talk about what a player's worth. If we talk about what a player's worth, we think of how good he is at that particular price. Is he good at 2 million? No, very good. Is he great? Is he really good at 10 million? Yeah, a lot better than 2 million. But it's the overall package. If you can get a guy near the end of his contract or out of contract, then that's the way I think Celtic will be looking. I don't think we would shelve out, say, just for argument's sake, 10 million on 4 or 5 players. That's a 50 million outlay in the transfer market. Celtic are like any kind of business to look at the longevity of the player's age and what age is he going to be and can we sell him. I think that was part of the reason they took the 10 million for Kyogo, because they thought, well, his age, you're not going to get 10 million next year for him. The guy wanted to leave, and I think if the guy wants to leave and get 10 million, deal done. I don't believe in keeping any player at the club if he doesn't want to play. Do you remember Edward? Last game at Ibrox, down tools, went to Crystal Palace. I just don't like that kind of thing. And managers don't like that in the dressing room either. I think, yeah, we should, and I'm hopeful we will. I'm always doubtful about the way Celtic do business sometimes. Do we really push the boat out? Has there been this guarded mentality since 1994 that we can't go near that again, and we have to have this sum of money in the bank as a buffer zone? I think that mentality is still there at Celtic, and you can understand why that is. But here we are, a great season in Europe, on the cusp of another treble, and all things good right now. But yes, next season, different ball game. We have to go again and make as good an impression in Europe as we did this year. The Champions League format, we've got one qualifier to play to get into it, and the teams that I've seen round about at the minute who probably win the league and we could play don't seem insurmountable for us. So if we do get into the Champions League next year, this coming season rather, then rich earnings, huge earnings this year, I think up to near 50 million, 45 million so far from the Champions League this year. So Celtic have to look at it, spend, accumulate, and you'll get what you deserve.
Yeah, and like just on those two players I mentioned that did cost 9 and 12 million. Engels ever present in the team in that midfield, either in and out of the team. I think he's 18 goals. He'll probably the possibility he'll 20 goals, which you want from your striker. He spent a lot of time on the bench as well, so I think they've got a decent return from the two players that they brought in and paid decent money for.
Yeah, I mean, I hear discontent amongst some fans about Aaron Engels, and I don't get it, to be honest with you. Is some of the moaning regarding Aaron Engels on the fact that you expected the finished article because he cost £11 million? What if this guy was plucked out of Celtic's youth system and he came through, he'd be going like that? That's the player. Let's say we didn't spend 11 million on him. Let's say that he came through a youth system and get into the team the way he is at the minute, you're going like that. He's a player. he's going to get a lot better. So maybe look at it that way. Forget the price tag. Look at the fact that he's young. It's his first season. He hasn't had a pre-season with us. And he knows the situation in Scottish football now. He's been round the course before. I think Ingles is going to be a top player for Celtic. I think he's a top player just now, but I think he's going to be even better. Had he been the finished article at 11 million, pardon me, lots of other teams in Germany would have bought him, you know. So we bought a player with fantastic promise, and you can see he's a good footballer. The ball, I mean, I noticed on Saturday there, he took quite a lot of the balls out for the goalkeeper and moved it from the halfway line, halfway between the halfway line the goals, and moved it up to the centre spot just over that. Pinged a perfect ball to the left hand side, right over at the other side of the park, and the lead up for I think it was the third goal. So yeah, he's a top player. Ida, yeah, he's proved it when he comes in. He scores goals like he did at the weekend there. I think a team have always got a problem when you have top quality and they might sit on the bench for 2 or 3 months at a time. Naturally, if you're a good footballer and you've got to that level in football, you want to be playing all the time. So it's how you keep them happy, you know. And, well, you know, Adams came in basically by, well, Maeda got the centre forward spot by default almost, didn't he? You know, I mean, nobody ever thought he was going to be the replacement centre forward for Kyogo. But he's come in and, you know, his goals, he could hit 40 this year. I mean, if we sat here this time last year, Andrew, we'd never have said,
Not
you know,
in a million
Maeda
years.
hitting 40 goals.
Not in a million years, Matt. If you had said, I'm going to put a couple of Bob on Maida to score over 30 goals this season, people would say, nah, he might even hit 20. He'll hit about 15. You know,
Yeah.
and that's just the way it is. Matt, you were at Tannadice. It was a great day. It was the 55th title for Celtic. Before I
So
let
I
you
didn't
go,
hear that. I didn't hear that. Could you say that again?
it was the 55th. That's 5-5. And if anyone's listening in the blue half of the city, 5-5, 5-5, 5-5. um, yeah, and the fanzine had come out about two weeks ago, and there was last week, and there was a tribute to Evan Williams in it, and um, when I was looking up pictures of Evan, and there's actually a picture of him from not so long ago, and he's obviously showing off his big hands as a goalkeeper, but it's 5-5, and I just went, good man, you know. And there's you know, you're looking down on us there. Magnificent two numbers. But Matt, there's been so many memorable celebrations of those titles. You think back to, you know, the Tannadice, the Tommy Bones, you know, winning the league for Tommy. Um, you know, 88 the centenary season, 98 stopping the 10. You know, even back when we couldn't fill the stadium, when Ronnie Dealey was there, when the top half of the Lisbon Lions stand, you know, was empty. Brendan came in then, and it was filled again. But that also increased because, you know, our rivals from across the city came back. There was no doubt that people did not buy season books when Rangers went out of business. But there's been so many memories, man, and you'll have, like, I come onto the scene, you know, the Celtic scene in 1988. You'll have many before that. Love Street, you know. There's just been so many, like, so just before you go, just share some of those, you know, league winning days with me.
Well, crikey, I remember far back, people always say, what was your first game? And honestly, I'd have to make it up because I can't remember. I've been to that many games. I remember my dad always taking me to the games. And my dad was a hairdresser. And for certain youthful punishments that I was given, I had to go and work in his shop on a Saturday morning and wash people's hair, women's hair. And they would end up getting the shampoo and set. And they would say to me, if it's dry, we'll go to the game. And I've ended up with this fixation about the weather now. as an adult, still got this fixation. I look out, I always looked out about 12:30, 1 o'clock to see how the sky was. Is it threatening? Because the weather's going to decide whether I'm going to football today or not. Anyway, he took me to all the games, and I remember vividly all the games in the lead up to Celtic winning the European Cup in 1967. So I'm now 70. So you can imagine what age I was then. They were fantastic memories. I remember the cup final at Hampden, George Conley, cup final, dispossessed John Gregg in the halfway line. Right through, I mean, there was the 100th cup final in 86, wasn't it? 86 was the 100th cup final. Macca's cup final in 88. Joe Miller cup final 89. Then harping back to something that we're talking about here earlier about winning and the feeling of winning and how it can never get boring winning. Between 89 and 95, that's 18 domestic trophies you're playing for. We won one at 18. We won one Scottish Cup in 1995. No leagues, nothing else. No League Cups between 89 and 95. So those years are ingrained in you as a Celtic fan. So winning is always great. Championships, right through the 9 in a row with Jock Stein. And I was very young at the time winning 9 in a row with Jock Stein. And I try and make a comparison just now to some of the younger crew that are going to games and I've never really seen periods, long sustained periods of league defeats, championship defeats. And I thought back to the time, how did I feel when the first 9 in a row was completed in the mid-70s? I actually remember standing in the jungle, feeling really disappointed and a bit hurt and upset that we hadn't won the league. It wasn't an anger. It was a disappointment. I didn't have an anger. I just felt we always won the league. But, that's what happens when you go through long spells of winning. You have to come to terms with the fact that you still go, you're still a Celtic supporter. It still means a lot to you. It still hurts when you get beat. It's still great when you win. These are all the things. You can't just be a fan when you're winning. You can't just be a fan when you're winning. You have to suffer. And we're not suffering anymore. Championships, 86 at Love Street. By hook or by crook, I ended up in the park behind the goals at Love Street, taking photographs, and had got to know Davy Hay reasonably well, and I'd raced over when the score came through for Dundee that they were winning 2-0. Celtic were 5 up at Love Street. Went over to get that last minute shot of when the final whistle went and they were all diving out the dugout. And that was amazing. I remember all the fans ran on the park. And I gave Davy Hay a hug. And he said to me, Matt, come into the dressing room, bring your camera into the dressing room, celebrate with the players. So I was in the dressing room celebrating with the players in 1986 at Love Street. And I've got a stack of pictures. And I actually knew Mo Johnson at the time. I have to say I don't know him anymore. He did try to nod to me in a garage away back in the early 90s in a petrol station. I just blanked him. But I knew Mo pretty well at the time, and who would have known at that time he was going to do what he did. And I says, can I get your boots, Mo? And he says, they're in the hamper. The dressing room's going mental. I got Danny McGrain's shorts for the game. And I was in the hamper looking for all these boots. And I think back to this day, how silly I was looking for Mo's boots when I'm pulling various other great players' boots out just to find his. Anyway, I found one boot and I've still got it. It was a size 8 Puma boot. And it's up my love somewhere. I don't want to throw it out. There's something a bit sick in me wants to keep it. Anyway, I was pulling all these other boots out the boot hamper as all the players were celebrating. And I'm thinking, just take the first pair of boots you find from a player from that day. Because I knew Mo pretty well, I wanted to get his. Ended up in the dressing room again. There's a video getting around of it in the 1988 after the Dundee League Championship decider beat Dundee. I think it's 3-0. We won the league at Celtic Park. You're maybe too young to remember, but the fans were all sitting around the track that day. And the old board at the time gave out the exact figure that the ground had a safety certificate for. I think it was 67,000. It was obviously about 75,000 there. Right through, just off the top, you caught me on the hop here off the top of my head. I mean, another great victory at Tannadice was Jan Venegur's header into the Celtic end the year when Tommy just passed away. I think the day before, or maybe just previous. That was a very poignant league championship victory because of Tommy. The whole emotion around all of that. We haven't won the league championship at Celtic, actually winning it on the day since 2018. So, since 2018 and bad 1 year, we've been rolling up to like pre-planned. This is the day we get clapped onto the park. We've won it before the game. But there is something very special about being at the game where you clinch the title, and saying that you're champions. It's fantastic. No Celtic fan should ever get bored of winning. It's just the most marvellous feeling ever. Think if it's not you winning, think what it's like if it's the other team winning. Think how you're going to feel then. Think of that. I've been there.
Believe it, man.
I've been there more often than I want to be there. But yeah, there you go.
Well, we don't get bored with winning, and Matt. I never get bored chatting to you. You've still emotionally Celtic. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me again this week, and I'll chat to you soon.
Pleasure, Andrew.
Thank you so much for staying with us, folks, and tuning into the podcast once again. Thank you so much for your support, as always. If you want to continue our support, you can visit the website celticfanzine.com, where you'll find our online shop, where you get all our t-shirts, the latest issue with the fanzine. You can subscribe to the fanzine, and you can also donate for the price of a coffee if you like what we do, as we do not put anything behind a Patreon or a paywall. And if you like your weekends, you're going to be looking forward to this one as we travel across the city to take on the Rangers on a lunchtime kickoff. Oh, they are celebrating at their new owners, but Celtic's in a good place at the moment. The league is wrapped up. The League Cup is in the trophy room, and we go for the Scottish Cup, and another treble is on the line. Exciting times to be a Celtic fans. Misery for Rangers. If you're a Rangers fan, the Blue Room is bare once more, and it will be bare for the summer. So, folks, have a great weekend. Stay tuned to the podcast. We'll be back next week with another episode, and hopefully we'll be celebrating another great victory across the city in Ibrox. And for all the fans going, enjoy your day out. For all the fans watching around the world, have a great day in the bar or at home or with your family, whatever you're doing. Hail, hail, folks. Talk soon.